Good morning, good morning, good morning, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Ask Sharifah podcast. I am your host, Sharifah Hardie, and I have a very special show for you today. This is the last show of the 2022 year. I can't believe this year has gone by so fast. It's an incredible year. You definitely want to go ahead and share this show because we're going to share some information that you will need to take into 2023. Wow. I can't even believe I'm saying it, 2023. Because our next guest, I know you will recognize her. You've seen her on Ask Sharifah podcast. You've seen her on the Roundtable Talk Show. She has her own podcast. She is a dear friend, an amazing individual. But before we go ahead and bring her in, we just want to go ahead and have a brief word from our sponsors.
Do you have an event coming up? Let HTH Productions capture your favorite moments in a beautiful, personalized virtual photo album. With our extensive range of timeless designs and color schemes, we can turn the most valuable day of your life into a lasting memory and create a virtual album that is uniquely yours. Order your own virtual photo album today so you can treasure it for years to come. Call us now at 916-613-9324.
Support My Black Business is a reliable GoFundMe-type crowdfunding platform specifically created for Black businesses. Our mission is to close the racial wealth gap by supporting Black-owned businesses and helping them grow. Through this powerful platform, Black business owners can create a campaign in just minutes and raise money. It is simple to launch and manage on the go, or participate in our mission to help us to create a better tomorrow by donating to our Black businesses. All donations go directly to making a difference for our cause. Your small support can change a lot of lives. Don't wait. Black business owners need your help. Just go to www.supportmyblackbusiness.org and create your campaign or donate today. Together, we can make a difference.
We can all make a difference. And I know I've been making a difference with this beautiful lady for some time, Miss Diane Bogino. She is an industrial organizational psychologist. She has assessments, coaching, mastermind, and she is a podcaster. We're going to talk about her work with managers who want to build a better career so they can make more money, join high performing teams, and have a happier life. Welcome, Diane. How are you?
It is great to be with you. Thank you so much. I am doing great. You got some great sponsors there too. Good for you.
Yes. Thank you. We have some more. Not going to show them on every show, but what have you been up to? What have you been up to this year?
Well, I feel like I've been on that roller coaster behind you. What a ride 2022 was. But things are getting better. But still, we have a global talent shortage. It's up 75%, believe it or not. So there are jobs out there for people. That's the good news. Now, the maybe not so good news is that they may have to do some, go back to school, get some certifications and things. But people have to ask themselves, what are they, what's the price they're willing to pay to get what they want?
Mhm.
So those are things that they need to look at going into 2023. Do a lot of research online, look at what jobs require, see where their interests are, which is what coaches like myself help them do if they're stuck or confused about where they want to go.
Now, you said a global talent shortage. Global talent shortage. We've been talking about that, especially during this past few years. There's been a mass exodus of people from the workforce for so many different reasons. Parents are at home, have been at home with their kids. Maybe they got laid off. Maybe because they were forced to stay at home, they went into another career. What are some of the reasons that you're seeing for this shortage?
Well, a lot of people say it's because the government gave them money, but I'm not so sure that's the case. Um, I think a lot of it has to do with people not keeping up with technology, for
Mhm.
one thing, not understanding how to leverage social media. Now, you and I are entrepreneurs and we understand how to leverage social media because we have to do that. That's what we do. But people who have a job, they need to understand how to leverage social media too. In fact, I'm going to tell you that a friend of mine was looking for a job, and one day just out of the clear blue, someone called them and said, I saw your resume on Indeed.com
Mhm.
and I want to talk to you, had an interview, went in for an interview, got hired.
Mhm.
So you need to understand how to use social media to let people know that you're available and that you're out there, what your skills are.
Okay, so when you say leveraging social media, so this person had their resume on Indeed. So are you saying, because some people, and I'm just asking, I like to look at it both ways, would say Indeed is not considered social media. So are we just saying making sure your resume is everywhere recruiters or people who are hiring can find you?
Oh, absolutely. Indeed may not be a social media platform,
Mhm.
but it is on the media out there in technology land. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
The other thing that people need to do is to make themselves a thought leader.
Okay.
You have a topic, a subject that you are good in, that you know frontwards, backwards, one side, up and down the other. You need to do a blog. You need to get on LinkedIn and talk about that. Instagram. I have a client. Well, he's not a client. He used to be a client who is from another country,
Mhm.
but he has a job. But he also has a podcast. He also posts on social media all the time.
Mhm.
He is known, and now he gets on conferences, he gets asked to speak. So, his future is going to be secure, whether he continues working in a job or he decides to go be an entrepreneur or whatever he wants to do for himself. But if he hadn't done that, nobody would know he's out there.
Right. So Diane, when you say, because I always listen to experts and coaches like yourself, and you say, go out there, make yourself into a thought leader. You know a topic inside and out. Say maybe there's a person listening. They know sewing. They love to sew. They've been sewing since they were knee high to a grasshopper or whatever that saying is. But how do you get to the point where you say, I am an expert. I am a thought leader. I can take this years of experience or take this knowledge and teach other people? Because some people feel no matter how long they've been doing it, who am I to be a leader or expert or even a guru in this field?
Right. That's a great question, Sharifah. We all struggle with that. It's called the imposter syndrome, right?
Yes.
But at some point, people are going to start asking you questions.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to come to you for advice. Those are clues that you now have a great deal of knowledge. I'm always amazed at what people don't know, and I think I know nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And people need help. They need information. They need the technology or technical skills of how to go out and do something.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I like the fact that you used a sewer, okay, because that's a person that has really got to find their audience.
Right.
Their audience is not going to be on LinkedIn. It's going to be someplace else, probably Instagram or Pinterest or something like that. But that's something that you've got to do some research on and find out where your audience is. I was amazed to find out by doing some research through, I found some information on Pew Research, PEW Research, that my audience, the client that I want to attract, is mostly on Instagram. And before I read that, I had almost no presence on Instagram at all, but I do now.
Oh,
So
yes.
that's what you have to do.
How do you differentiate your message for different platforms? Because you said you weren't on Instagram, you're now on Instagram, and Instagram is a photo-driven social media platform. For someone like myself, I love to talk, I love to write, but I take very few photos. How does one adjust to the different platforms?
Good question. Um, I'll give you an example. On Instagram, I post a rather wild thumbnail to attract people, which is something you learn you have to do.
Mhm.
And I put some verbiage up there to give people some advice
Mhm.
or information that they might need, but also a link to the video that I've done on that topic for that week. But then I take that same information and I go through the script I did for that video. Now, I may or may not use the same thumbnail, but I may change it. And I take that thumbnail and the text and post it on LinkedIn. So
Okay.
now I've cleaned it up, maybe made it a little more professional or whatever it might need. So you adjust your information, and that's called repurposing. So you're constantly not reinventing the wheel.
Mhm.
So great question that you do have to adjust your information and your content to the platform that you're going to be on.
Do you find any platform easier for you?
Yeah, I think that Pinterest is difficult, not because they make it difficult, but it's just not something I work with, and I don't think my audience is there. But I've been on LinkedIn a long, long time, almost since its creation.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm familiar with it. And I had to learn Instagram. So I was not comfortable with it at first. And I still have a lot to learn about how to attract an audience because I don't have very many followers on there. But it's like when I tell people, if I invite a guest on my podcast, I'll tell them now, when you go to my podcast on YouTube, you're not going to see a lot of followers. But with my combined social media followers, I have over 7,000 people.
Hmm.
So you have to sell what you have.
Right, right. The combined numbers, because I'm like that. I'm probably the opposite of most internet people or people who've been on social media for some time because I don't have a platform or a presence rather on Twitter. I'm not for having these, conversations at 3 a.m. telling the world what my thoughts are. That's not me. So I once I did years ago, deleted it. I don't have a presence on LinkedIn. I've been on and off LinkedIn for years. I just don't have a presence. But I love Instagram. I love Facebook. So I always tend to focus on the things that work for me. And certain times you get to a certain place in your business or entrepreneurship where you're like, okay, I can work this platform and I get the results that I need. But then you expand and you grow. And one of the things that you mentioned is your podcast. How many episodes do you have now?
Well, I have two podcasts, and I
Okay.
think I have over 100 videos on each of them, so
Okay.
200 or so altogether. And still, I drop a video every week on my Build a Better Career podcast,
Okay.
and that's just me. The other one is just strictly interviews, and that takes time to develop, get people on there. What
Mhm.
I want to do is to interview more people that actually do jobs. For example, one of the fields that needs people are medical examiners. Now,
Okay.
I know that doesn't sound too sexy, but it does require a lot of skill, and you're really doing something for your community because you're doing forensics when maybe you find out how a person died, maybe it can lead them to catching the criminal,
Mhm.
but there's a shortage of that. So those are the kinds of things that people can look into and do some research on social media to find out what is needed out there and where they can fit in.
Wow, when you said medical examiner and then you said it doesn't sound too sexy, I was immediately intrigued because that's a position that I would have a million questions for. Like, what does your day look like? How do you stay engaged? How do you keep doing this day after day after day? How do you not get, I would have a million questions. So it may not be sexy to some people, but it's interesting to me. And that's why I love doing interviews because I get to ask all the questions, whatever questions are on my mind. But back to you and your shows. What are the names of your shows, your podcast?
Uh, yeah, one is Build a Better Career, and the other one is Business Notes. The Business Notes is where I interview entrepreneurs. You've been on there, and
Yes,
so all the great stars, right?
yes, yes. So between two shows, 100 episodes or 100 videos each, that's over 200 episodes. When did you launch your podcast, your first podcast?
Well, I actually used to have one years ago. I was ahead of the curve, ahead of my time, and I've closed that one down. But I first started when COVID hit,
Okay,
so that I started back up then. Yeah, so I've
okay,
been going ever since. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what interests you or what made you decide to become a podcaster?
Oh, wow. Another good question. It's interesting. I used to do commercials.
Mhm.
I did a movie once called Something Special, but it wasn't. I did voiceovers and I did acting. And it was just a natural segue for me
Mhm.
being in my 15 minutes of show business, uh, because there was a lot of training that I already had under my belt. And this is another thing that people need to take stock of. What is their experience? How can they take those transferable skills and use them? So, as well as I do, you've got to have a nice
Mhm.
presence on camera. You cannot be over here or reaching up there or going over here like that. You've got to have that presence. You've got to, now I'm not good at talking on my feet, but there are ways to get
Mhm.
around that. And to me, I think you always need to be professional, and I think people can take a clue from you about that. I don't care what kind of guests you have on your shows, Sharifah. You can handle them. You make them feel special. You get the information your audience needs, and that's a real skill. That's just not something you pick up overnight or read in a book.
Oh, well, thank you. I received that. It is a skill. I launched my first podcast in 2009. So I've been doing this for a long time. But the thing that remains the same through all these years is just having a natural interest in people. And there are rules that I put in place that most the audience probably isn't aware of in order to get that. So often people want to have pre-show interviews and they want to talk and they want to tell me what they're going to tell me on the interview. And I always, gently try to remind them that it removes that natural inquisitive ability for me to find out about them. I love to approach any guest like if someone walked into your store, if this was the career coach store and I needed career coaching and I just walked in and I had no idea who you were and what you do. I like to come in with that mindset because that's what my audience does. They don't have the history or anything like that. But in certain cases, if there's something that someone wants to make sure that I mention or wants to make sure that I ask, feel free, send over topics, send over questions, but let's sit down and have a natural, organic conversation that show, because people forget how to talk. We forget how to have a simple conversation these days. Do you find that to be true, Diane?
Yeah, I think that, young people, bless their hearts, they really have lost out during this pandemic in terms of interacting with each other. That's going to be a real problem going forward. So they're going to have to do a lot of catching up. Uh, and I can relate to that, having been such a shy individual. I mean, I'm still shy, but you have to work through those blockages that you have in trying to reach your goals. Whatever you have to do to get there, you need to work on it. It's not, nothing comes overnight. The stars that have reached stardom overnight, they've been working for years, believe me. So again, it's what are you willing to do to achieve the goals that you want to achieve? Are you willing to get a certification, go back to school, practice? Even on Zoom, a lot of times, like if they bring on something new, you need to practice with it.
Mhm.
So it's just something that you have to take the bull by the horns and do.
What areas does a career coach cover?
Well, in my specific practice, I like to work with people that are trying to get into the C suite. Other people work with executives who are already in the C suite. My sweet spot are like young managers, mid managers who have become stuck. People get unsure of themselves. Maybe something happened in their career that they think that they're not worth anything. And of course, today, ageism is a big deal because people discriminate against you for whatever they can discriminate you against.
Mhm.
Uh, your one of your sponsors is helping Black businesses, and I'm all for that. But us old white women need help too, so everybody needs help. And just because somebody is got some mileage on them doesn't mean that they're drooling at the mouth and can't walk and talk and chew gum at the same time. So don't sell people short for the value they can bring to your business.
Do individuals feel when you talk about, older people that maybe, let's just say 50-ish. I've been doing a certain career my whole life. I'm unable to find work in that career. But sometimes we feel like you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So how do I start over? How do I get a new career? How do I, because there's also a fear when you talk about ageism of going into a class and learning something, but everybody in this class is 19 and 20, and I'm 57. How do you get past that and work through that?
Yeah, you have to grab those bootstraps. I did not start college until I was in my 40s because I thought I was too stupid to go to college.
Oh,
And
wow.
then I just got my master's in 2013. So I guarantee you, everybody was young. Even the professor was younger than me. You have to work through it. Also, you have to be sure that you get with somebody who does resumes really well and make your resume look up to date. And, there are certain styles that resumes take on through the years, and learn how to get it through that ATS system. You can't have lines on it and graphics and things like that because it'll get kicked out. So you have to stay up with what's going on in job search, just like you do everything else. You might need to hire a recruiter or go to, there are like churches that have classes on finding jobs. Keep a portfolio. I always talk about that kudos file, but also keep a portfolio. I sat down the other day and did a portfolio for a company on myself, and I just kind of shocked myself on the things that I had accomplished in my coaching for different areas, like the military people, for executives, for people trying to get into the executive suite, young people trying to find their first job. And it was very reassuring. So again, that self-assessment is really important.
I think self-assessment is really important, but also I believe at times you need someone else to give you a different perspective. I always share the story of my life. I was laid off 8 times, literally laid off 8 times. And it wasn't a question of being fired. Companies relocated. One company was in California, moved to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. One company is in El Segundo, California, relocated 2 hours away. Another company laid off about 4,000 employees. And I was job hunting, and I saying to myself, I know everyone is looking at my resume and says she's a job hopper. She doesn't stay at jobs too long, but I didn't know what to do. And I went to this interview, and this gentleman, he looked at my resume and he said, "You have the resume of an engineer." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Because you have such a diverse skill set." And I looked at it from a different perspective. And then I tried to find more commonalities in my skill set, as opposed to just saying, okay, I had 8 billion different jobs, but these are some of the different things that I did within these jobs, because I learned marketing, I learned PR, I learned how to network computers, I can do accounting, I can do so many different things. But it was from being laid off so many different times. But I needed someone on the outside to take a look at it and give me a different perspective, because I was feeling really bad about myself.
You're absolutely right. And look what you've done with all those transferable skills and
Yeah.
making a business out of what you bring to the table and your innate skills, which is something people neglect. Like you were talking about a while ago, Sharifah, about the talent you have of being able to bring information out of people and making people feel relaxed on the show, because not everybody is used to doing this type of work or being on camera. And you have that innate ability to do that. So that's a skill too that people often neglect to think about.
Mhm. Because when we have those skills, you see it as a skill, innate ability. But for me, it's something that just comes natural. But I recognize it in my later years as a skill and as a talent. I always talk about my cousin, who is a news reporter in Columbus, Ohio. He's on like Channel 4, like one of the prime major stations, reports the news. He's in his 40s. But when he was 9 years old, this little kid, he'd walk around the house with this spoon and he'd interview everybody and do his little interviews. But there was never a point in time in his life when he ever wondered, or we ever wondered, what he was going to be. And I always admired that. And I always loved people who said, "Oh, well, I know I'm going to be a doctor, or I know I'm going to be a police officer." And I never knew what I was meant to do. I never knew what I was, how I was going to turn out. But when I look back over my life, I've always loved to talk. I've always loved to ask questions. I was that little kid that my mom had to like just be embarrassed by, because I would always ask, Mom, why that lady have those glasses? Does she need those glasses? And the lady's like right there, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care. I would embarrass my mom everywhere. But I love to talk. I love to ask questions because I always wanted the answers. I wanted to know. And I had no clue, as my mom would say, but I asked questions. How do you discover these things and turn them actually into a career, though? That's my question.
Mm-hmm. Well, in my business, I use assessments to help people come to that. The ones I use, they actually come up with 25 of their competencies in rank order.
Mm-hmm.
So they have those things right there, and they can use them in resumes and interviews, on their cover letters. And like you say, you can also go ask your friends, people that you trust, what do you see as my strengths? What do you think my talents are? And make a list of them. There are many ways to find out about your self-assessment, but the information has to come from people that you trust. And when you are looking for a job, if you'll go through the job descriptions, you will see these are things that I can do. One day on my podcast, I just got this wild hair. And so I said, I went in on onet.com, which is a government-run website. You can put any position in there you want and get all the skills and talents that it requires and the salaries that it might pay in different parts of the country. But I just randomly picked like 6 or 8 positions to see how many common transferable skills they had. And I came up with like 6 or 8 for just totally random positions and posted it on one of the things on Build a Better Career. So if you want to take a look at that, but that's just what it takes. Just like you were saying, take all the things that you've done in your life and repurpose them. See how they can be used now today, because things have changed.
Now, you mentioned an assessment. Is the assessment on your website?
No, that's something that I give people once I'm hired. I will give them, I administer this, it's actually a battery of assessments. It's 5 sciences in them. And you get your business acumen, how your behaviors and your motivators works for you, and maybe how they don't work for you. How you communicate with people, how you can take your strengths and use them. And we start working from there and helping you get set for what you want to do for your life and your career. And they work together, your life and your career. If you're not happy in one, you're not going to be happy in the other one. So we get into all kinds of areas when you do coaching.
Your life and your career. That's interesting. So when you say your life, you mean like the person's life, just overall, they're unhappy. Maybe they need a career change.
Maybe that's true, because I tell you what, when you go to a job you hate all day and you come home, you are not a happy camper, and your family's not going to be happy if you're running around kicking the cat. That's not good.
Right. And I know I've always been, and it's a family trait. I don't know what it is. It's in our blood, but I never have the ability to work at a company or a job that I hate. It's just like, if I go and I hate it, I'm leaving. I'm out. I have no backup, no plan B. That's the part that I need to work on, because I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm done. I don't want to do this. And people are like, but you gotta work. You gotta eat. Like, not here. I'll find something else. And I just move on. I've never been able to understand that. But hey, different strokes for different folks, as they say. Now,
That's right.
You said you give a battery of assessments and people work with you. Now, is this an overnight success? They go in, they sit down with Diane Bogino. She waves her magic wand. 2 hours later, I have the career of my dreams. Is this a 2-week, 2-month? How does your process work?
Oh, I wish. Well, they can sign up with me by the hour, 3 months or 6 months. It's really better the longer you do, because there are so many things that you go through, the emotions and learning about yourself, and you will find disappointments along the way. And it takes time to build that resume and get it really looking good. and you're the person that has to stand behind it. So you have to be confident about that. So I want to get you to that point as well. Don't neglect cover letters. Now, cover letters have a bad rap, but you can take information from your assessments and the things that we work on and put them in your cover letter. This needs to be information different from your resume. Why pass up an opportunity to give an employer additional information about you? They can see your writing skills, your logical thinking, all of those things that come into play in a job. And today, Sharifah, the hard skills are important, but I'm going to tell you something. If you don't have the soft skills, you're not going to make it. Just like you don't want to work for somebody that doesn't have good soft skills. They're not going to hire you if they can teach you the job, but they're not going to hire you if you're a grump. I can tell you that. Or if we have to work with people that we might not otherwise socialize with.
Mm-hmm.
We might not choose to be with these people on a daily basis, but there we are. It's like our family. We had no choice with our family. And if we have a job that we love, we're working with people that we might not choose to work with, but you better learn how to get along with everybody.
Yes, absolutely. That's life. How do we all get along? Now, are your services more geared toward the job seeker or someone who wants to move up in your career? What if I'm happy at my job, I love my career, everything's fine. Do I need a coach?
It depends. Nothing lasts forever. And it's like you said, you get in a situation sometimes where you feel like you just have to get out of that situation. So first, always keep money saved so that if you had to get in that situation, you could leave. Okay. Now, I work with people that are seeking jobs. I work with people that are stuck in their careers. I work with people that want to get out of a job and go start their own business. I've done it all.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say my sweet spot is someone who's really unhappy in their career and needs a change. And maybe they don't even know what that is yet.
Mm-hmm. So their change, will you help them find a new career? You'll find the skills, the talent to get a new career, or maybe it's just, because one of the things as a business consultant that I've learned in doing this for nearly 30 years, when I first started and I do website design, people would always tell me, Sharifah, I want you to build this website for me because I want to quit my day job. I hate my boss. I hate my commute. I hate everything about it. And I can tell you right now, honestly, to this day, I know people who 20 something years ago told me they were quitting their job and they wanted to start their own business. And those people are still at those jobs. And so I learned to recognize that people, just because they were maybe uncomfortable in a certain situation or didn't like a situation, they weren't necessarily ready to take that next step. How do you work with those people when maybe they're not even committed to the change?
Well, I think when somebody hires a coach, they really are ready for a change. Now, I have had clients who don't do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't work with people like that if they're not willing to do the work. Okay. So let's get that straight right from the get-go. But yes, change is hard. And people would rather stay in a difficult situation because they know what to expect rather than make a change. But change doesn't have to be sudden. And oftentimes when I work with someone, I help them to be happier at their current job. And maybe they do decide to stay there because they changed something about them or understood their boss better or something like that. Or we get them ready to make that change where they have the courage and the confidence. I never tell somebody, go jump off the cliff. Okay. That's not any good coaching advice for anyone. So it's gradual and it takes time. But in that meantime, there are ways to find ways to enjoy the job better and the people that you're around and understand them better as well as yourself.
Absolutely. Now, Diane, we are coming down to the last few minutes of the show. And what I love to do at the end of every show is just simply allow my guests the opportunity to speak directly to the audience, to everyone who is watching the show live, as well as everyone who is watching in the archives, and let them know what you want them to take away from your appearance here today.
I want people to know that there are plenty of jobs out there. If you're unhappy in your job, try to find some ways to make it better for yourself, to be happier in that job. Understand yourself better, understand the people around you better. The DISC assessment is a great way to do that. So that gives you a level of comfort while you're trying to make this change. And everyone needs help from time to time. So don't try to do this alone. Either get with a trusted mentor, hire a coach at work, or hire a coach like myself. And you can work your way through whatever you're stuck with at the moment, get through it, and find the life that you want, both personally and professionally.
Absolutely. And where can people find more information about you?
Well, they can email me at diane@dianebogino.com. My website is performstrat.com. And of course, my 2 podcasts, they can go on there, Build a Better Career and Business Notes, and find great ideas.
Wonderful. Well, Diane, I want to thank you for being a guest on today's episode of Ask Sharifah Podcast. And
Thank you.
Definitely, you are so welcome. I want to thank everyone who tuned in to watch this show live, as well as everyone who is watching it in the podcast, in the archives. I definitely appreciate your support. But please go ahead and share this show, because your friend may be at a job they don't like. Maybe they need a new career. Maybe they want to move up. Maybe they want to be a C-suite executive. But they will not have this information unless you go ahead and share the show with them. Now, if you're interested in watching more of my interviews, finding out more about my guests, or maybe you want to be a guest on Ask Sharifah Podcast, please visit my website at AskSharifah.com. Everyone have a definitely a safe. Go make sure you wear your mask. If you're going out, it's a flu season. If nothing else, stay away from all those germs. Wash your hands. Do not drink and drive. Stay safe. Happy holidays and Happy New Year. Bye now.